Hey everyone, I'm Rachel Martin, owner and vintner of Oceano Wines. And with us today is Travis Croxton, co-owner of Rappahannock Oyster Company. And on Tasting Room Live, we like to highlight good people doing great things, just like Travis. So Travis, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate
Yeah,
this. It'll be fun.
It's been a long time. Full disclosure, I've known Travis since, let's see, I'm not exactly sure when we met, but it might have been at Charleston Wine and Food Festival.
Yeah, we did a
Or
lot of those together, a lot of parties, Charleston, some other parties, some Virginia tourism
yeah,
things that we've done
right,
in New York. Yeah, we go
right.
back a ways. Little hazy nights.
That's yeah, great nights. Hey, it's the industry. But we did a lot of things having to do with Virginia because, I was running Boxwood Winery, my family's winery at that time, growing grapes, making wine. And what's interesting is we started out doing Bordeaux blends, but then we eventually ended up making Sauvignon Blanc, which would pair like fabulously with your oysters. But now my thing is Oceano wines. I'm all about the coast, and I guess so are you.
Yeah,
And I love everything that grows along the coast. And I love to pair our wines with seafood and shellfish. And I'm a big fan of oysters, and I'm a fan of Rappahannock oysters. And so I'd love for you to tell everyone about Rappahannock and how it started, history, and how you've changed the industry. I know no one single-handedly changes an industry, but your influence on it.
sure. And I talk a lot, so please cut me off if you have questions or anything. But basically, my cousin Ryan and I resurrected our family's company in around 2002. Um, our family's oyster grounds, the leases that we have, were coming up for renewal, and our fathers had inherited the grounds from their father, and they had real jobs, so they were just they were going to give it up, and so we decided to take it on as a hobby, and we didn't have any um, land, boats, property knowledge, so we were just researching. All right, now we have these grounds. And by the way, in Virginia and Maryland and some other states, you can lease underwater river bottom from the state for like a couple of dollars an acre or so. So that's what we had inherited, and that dated back to 1899. So we wanted to kind of keep it in the family, but we didn't know what to do with it. The old ways of oystering in the bay had kind of gone by the wayside. Um, at that time, I think the Chesapeake had 1% of its former oyster population. So we quickly realized that other regions across the world, except for the Chesapeake and the Gulf of Mexico, had moved to aquaculture. And then we actually learned that there were some burgeoning um, groups of folks starting to do what they call oyster gardening, where they would have little floats off their docks, growing oysters. And at the same time, this was when the commercial and the political and scientific industry was trying to introduce a foreign species because the Chesapeake, like I said, it was at its nadir. We had over harvested this species for centuries, and it finally collapsed in the 1970s and 80s. And so, rather than build it back correctly, there was a short-term push to introduce Ericensis, which is a foreign oyster species. And they even put some in the water with trials and things like that. And they grew faster and quicker, but they weren't the Virginica species of oyster. They didn't have the same flavor, same shelf life. And you never know when you introduce something non-native, the effects that it may have.
Typically,
So,
it's a
yeah,
negative effect.
most of the time it's a negative effect. And so we kind of were trying to overcome two things. One was, all right, let's do aquaculture. Let's grow our oysters in cages, and let's also prove that you can actually succeed. One of the reasons and arguments for Eric Kansas was that the in the 50s and 60s or so, some of the ships brought in their ballast dermo and MSX, two diseases that can ravage our native oysters. So the argument they had is that there's no natural species left. It won't survive. It won't rehabilitate itself. But we kind of focus on, hey, we've overharvested it, so we never gave it a chance. With aquaculture, we have more control over it, and we proved that you could actually grow a native oyster to a market size, and it would survive. So we had to learn how to grow it, prove that we could, and we had to combat this push to introduce a foreign species, which we were like dead set against. And somehow, I don't know how, but we lucked out and doing events with folks like yourself and some others, and got some notoriety, and we're able to get some news articles out there and turn the tide, so to speak.
Yes, you got a lot of traction really quickly.
Yeah.
Well, it seemed like to me that you guys were taking off. Do you think that had something to do with the restaurants, or did it when you started? When did the restaurant start? Because I know you have a restaurant, Miroir, and that's
Miroir just celebrated its 10th anniversary. Quick 10 years. So that started in 2011. So about 10 years after the oyster company had restarted. So I think initially, like the first 2 years, everything was growing. As soon as we had any market size oysters, we would pack coolers up, jump in my car, drive up to New York City or Philadelphia, and knock on the great doors of restaurants. It's up like a Zagat guide, and that's how we actually kind of learned fine dining.
Okay, that's awesome. So you use the Saget guide to decide where to knock on doors to
because I mean we're like two rednecks from Rappahannock, Virginia. We didn't go to these nice places, but we quickly learned, and we picked up on some things. We made some good friends who referred us, and those referrals at the upper echelon of the chefs in the country. So those went a long way. So we really never made any cold calls over the phone. It was all just in person, and then referrals, and then just we connected with a lot of people that were looking for something new, and we kind of had that. No one else was serving boutique bay oysters at the time. It was all just, it was similar, to the Gulf, the just high volume, muddy, kind of nasty stuff. But now, the aquaculture, Virginia is actually number one in production now. And the Gulf's actually coming around as well. So we like to see that, in Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, they're actually doing what we did a couple decades ago and sprouting off these aquaculture oyster farms and making great product in a place that formerly was, not the best quality. So we
that's a great trend to start.
Yeah, I mean, hurts like some of our southeastern accounts we kind of lost because, rightly so, they're supporting those local boys and girls. Right. But it's a good thing. We're proud of that, because when we started this in 2002, you couldn't find them on the menu anywhere. There was a disgust for bay oysters just because of what I said. Like normally it was just wild, muddy, or sometimes it was even relayed or an imposter oyster from the Gulf called a bay oyster. It wasn't what we serve and what you see on menus today. So we had to combat that disdain that people had and just educate them on what we do, our process, and why it's different.
Right. Yeah. I think that there is a similarity to when I was to Virginia wine, that there was a negative impression that many people had when we had started the winery in 2005. So it was kind of hard to break that bad reputation and prove to people that we were doing world-class wines. So can you, we talk a lot about tasting notes for wines, and everyone, there are critics that are rallied around different descriptors for wines. How would you describe your oysters? And can you talk a little bit about the different oysters and clams that you all farm?
So we kind of lucked out. So our great grandfather had started oyster farming in the late 1800s in the Rappahannock River. And so we inherited those grounds, and that's our namesake oyster brand. And we named our restaurants after that. But when we had our first harvest in 2004, I think it was in an extreme drought. And so the Rappahannock was saltier than it normally is because of less rainfall. So the Rappahannock normally is it's a mild, sweet, and buttery oyster. Beginners love it because it's not overpowering, and connoisseurs love it because you can actually taste the minerality of the animal itself. But for a lot of chefs, especially like male Northeastern chefs, they like salty oysters. So luckily, this drought year, the Rappahannock actually kind of fit because it was kind of salty at the time. But we knew that, a year later, it would be a little more mild, stuff like it normally is. And so we recognized that we needed to open up some other farms that had different flavor profiles. If you Google oyster tins, you'll see that back in the 50s and so, every bend of the river throughout the bay, some had different oyster brands. And we lost that in the Chesapeake. And, we went up to Grand Central, I think in 04 and stuff, and they had one oyster from the Chesapeake, and it was called Chesapeake, versus 20 oysters from Massachusetts with different brand names, boutique names. So we wanted to bring that back. So we opened up a second farm out near Chincoteague, Virginia, because if some of the chefs wanted a salty oyster, we wanted to give them the saltiest oyster on the market. And that's our Old Salt from Chincoteague. And then we wanted those are fantastic. I mean, they're my favorite, as well. But I will say, that the Rappahannocks are great with wine, and Old Salts are also, but the cold beer also goes down really well with those two. But so we did that, and then we said, hey, let's actually round it out with something in the middle. And so we opened up a third farm, Rochambeau oysters, and those are off of the York River, and they're kind of a flavor in between the two. And so once we had those, we decided, hey, let's knock off the concept of terroir that wine has, and let's call it merroir of the sea. And so at all of our restaurants, we, the servers and bartenders, they start with a combo. You get, 4 Rappahannocks, 4 Rochambeaus, 4 Old Salts, and start with the sweet Rappahannocks and work your way up, kind of like a wine tasting. Sure. And that way, everyone gets to just taste the different flavors and figure out which one they like the best. And that's what we push at every restaurant, and people love it. So it gets everyone talking about it.
Yeah, well, it's a way to educate. So when you're more educated, you can appreciate the things, a little bit more. And so tell us about the different restaurants and the locations, and perhaps how the restaurants differ from one another.
Yeah, so they're all completely different other than they serve our oysters, but everyone should make a pilgrimage to Merroir. That's our original tasting room on the Rappahannock River. That's situated at our main oyster farm. You can watch all our guys working, and there's picnic tables right on the water. It's just kind of just a small plates, and it's just very rustic. We actually have an Airbnb right beside it called the Oyster Bed at Merroir. So that's actually booking up quite a bit. And so that's like 3 hours south of DC, 1 hour east of Richmond, an hour north of Virginia Beach. But it's in the northern neck, a beautiful place. And then we opened up a stall at Union Market in September of 2013, I think it was. And that one,
That's in DC.
yeah, that's in Washington, and that one's it's 16-seat raw bar, and we have like a 22-seat high top behind it. It was just this. We wanted that communal feel that the oyster bars used to have, and that one's had just. It's been awesome. Like early on, we recognized that on Sundays we'd see lots of chefs from town eating there, and knew we had something. And we just reopened that one actually recently, and getting that back up going again. It's been tough, but it's people are coming back. They love that place. And then a couple months after Union, we actually opened up Rappahannock in Richmond, which that won Esquire's best new restaurant in 2014. Dylan Fulton was our chef for the first 7 years of that. And
yeah, I'm a fan of his
he was amazing. Still is. And that one was kind of our upscale, casual, sort of fine dining restaurant, really featuring local farmers, proteins, vegetables, things like that. I mean, Dylan was at every farmer's market and would actually work with the growers to get them to realize what they could grow for restaurants. And I actually still have farmers come up to me and say how much he impacted what they do and how they think about things. And I think that's a true testament to him.
Awesome. Shout out to Dylan.
Yeah. And then we opened what was next? We took our time, but then we went on a spree the last few years or so and took on too much, but they're all actually doing really well. We opened up in Charleston, South Carolina, and that one is phenomenal with Chef Kevin Kelly there. Amazing. Yeah, that one is lights out. That's like a full concept restaurant also.
So impressive. The bar is amazing.
Yeah. And food there is incredible. And
but
then
you carry also other oyster.
Yeah, so only at 2 locations do we carry other oysters. That's one of them because they have like a really cool local scene in Charleston. And then we opened up in Los Angeles, downtown. And that one's it looks like none of the others. It's a cool spot downtown, which we wanted to be a part of. And that one actually we carried like a local Baja oyster as well for happy hour. But Chef
I haven't made it there yet, but I definitely will.
You got to check that off your list. It's totally different, but it's beautiful. It's big outdoors. It's in this development with cool boutique shops, and Chef Wilson out there is amazing. He's a godsend for us. And then we also right after that we opened up at the Wharf in DC. It was an old building dating to the 1800s, and it's the only like building in this 2-mile development that they did not tear down. They sort of resurrected it, modified it, and put us in there. And so it's really historic, and it's kind of like the entry to that development right on the Potomac and everything. So that's actually really cool. They all look totally different feels, but we always wanted to be part of something either historic downtown to revitalize, or they had a lot of history. And so we've done that. And I think you'd met Jess Opperman before.
Oh yeah.
Okay. She's our director of operations, so she runs all of the restaurants.
I want to go visit her. Okay.
Yeah, well, she doesn't take a day off, but she had to like during COVID, like reset them all, like reopen all of them, and they're all actually knocking it out of the park. So we couldn't be happier with where we are. The last one yet to open is Rappahannock in Richmond, and that hopefully will open up next month.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's a sore subject, but can you talk a little bit how you were affected, how the company was affected by COVID, and how you're recovering from that.
Yeah, so on the oyster company's side of the house, we had to, we saw it kind of hitting region by region. Oh, Los Angeles, they canceled all their sales, not just at restaurants, but other groups and stuff that we sell to, and then stuff to New York, and then everything else, and then like our team in Charleston was like, oh, it's not coming here. They won't shut us down, and then like 2 days later, they got shut down. So we saw it happening, and then between the restaurants and the oyster company, we had to furlough like 300 people within a week. And so that conversation to tell people that through no fault of their own, we had to like furlough them, and we did it quickly just because we wanted them to get ahead on unemployment. It was tough, and then so restaurants, we kept the GMs and the ECs, and they pivoted quickly, and then as soon as they could do more, we hired back. And then like I said, Jess was in Los Angeles for like 3 months, and then DC 2 months, and just like redoing everything, building them back up. And then oyster company side, I started driving trucks again like 20 years ago, and so I apologize to everyone.
Back to the basics.
Everyone who's on the highway last year, I apologize for anything that I might have done. But yeah, we went back to the basics, and we went from, I think the first week after the furlough, we had a couple wholesalers that sold to Whole Foods their product, and that was about it. That was like a couple thousand oysters a week. But then we grew it, and by June we got back up to like 150 a week, 150,000 oysters a week. So it was tough, but it was a lot of soul searching. But obviously, we wanted to not fail at it.
Yeah, and then you have a direct to consumer business as well.
Yeah, so that we've
How
always
did that go?
we've always had that. But it definitely jumped up. Actually, there was a Washington Post article in I think April that came out, and I was actually driving a truck home from Chincoteague picking up those oysters, and I was looking at my phone and just orders every minute, boom, 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 and I stayed up all night after I got back to our farm and just processed them in QuickBooks and UPS labels all night long. It's like, whoa. So that was good because, it saved us in April, late March and April, that saved us. And it's tailed off, a little bit as you've seen, everyone's at restaurants now. But, we still had that direct to consumer business. And we've introduced a line of products, also cocktail sauce that we make, hot sauce, remoulade. You can find most of them in Whole Foods, but also online. It's, good value added stuff, and just further diversifying. And we're back to doing events also. We lost that last year. We used to do a ton of events, either for profit or for charity. And, last year was nothing. So we finally relaunched that. It's going well. So yeah, we're back.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to more in-person events too. It's a great way to be able to connect directly with your customer, future customer. So yeah, I'm totally looking forward to that. So how do you measure oysters? Like how in production, do you talk about like a yearly production or a monthly production? How many oysters do you guys produce, and how much of it goes to your restaurants and to wholesale and then direct to consumer?
Yeah, so we sell normally, like for restaurants, we sell in 100 count bags. Now on the West Coast, they sell by the dozen. So there's always like when you're dealing with wholesalers, you guys say, all right, what page are you guys on? Are you 12 counts or 100 counts? But usually East Coast and Midwest, it's 100 count bags. So say like a purveyor says, hey, I want 10 bags of old salts. That's 1,000 old salts. So 10 bags of 100. And then, we ship it either on refrigerated trucking companies up and down East Coast or Midwest, or we fly it out on Southwest Cargo. or UPS or FedEx. So we do about 5 million Rappahannocks and about 5 million old salts per year that we grow and sell. So like, actually, I'm sorry, we grow like double that because you normally have about 50% mortality because we grow them from this little baby seed out to market size. So you lose a lot at each little step. You try not to lose a lot once they're bigger, but it can happen. So we average around, probably 8-10 million per year of ours that we sell. And we also have some co-oppers we work with for our Barcat oyster brand that we buy theirs right off the boat pretty much and then distribute that under that name. A lot of the watermen we were able to convert early on to growing oysters, stuff with aquaculture, but they're very independent. They don't like doing sales, so they rather just sell and unload it off the boat and just so it kind of works out, and we're able to get those in for happy hour prices at a lot of restaurants, a little bit cheaper. So yeah, we send out about 180 to 200 thousand oysters a week currently. So about 8 to 10 each year. So yeah, it's a little bit. It sounds like a lot.
Sounds like a lot.
I guess it is, but we sell probably 15% of that to our restaurants, and the rest of it to distributors and restaurants. And we've worked with the same folks for 20 years, so we try to add a couple new clients each year, but we just like to keep the existing clients happy. And
do you export out of the country?
So we have in the past, and we're actually about to start again, to Hong Kong and Singapore. I just have to get updated air freight pricing on that, but they're starting to kind of be down on call us again for product and stuff being on our door a little bit. So that will happen pretty soon, and hopefully we can get people. And a good thing that we do with that is we also travel over there, and we like to kind of push them on Virginia wines, things like that, and just tie it all in.
So nice.
Yeah.
Well, there are programs, right, with the governor of Virginia likes to, support the export markets and do a little bit of a show out in other countries.
Yeah, we had a good time with McAuliffe back when he was there, because he would do a lot of trade missions and stuff and say, you guys want to come along. So we pay our own way, but it's a lot of coordination they would set up and meeting customers and stuff and and open up the pipeline. And then there's SUSTA, which is the Southern U.S. Trade Association. They also put together programs. So it's a fun way to see the world. Like I said, we're two rednecks from Rappahannock. Whoever thought that an oyster in the Rappahannock would lead us to Guangzhou or a remote place in Thailand. It's pretty cool.
I don't know. It's a beautiful world of food and beverage. I mean, that's definitely why, one of the joys that I have of being in the industry, for sure. What I think it's great if everyone goes to your website to check out the history of your family's history, and as would you say an oyster fishery, or is it oysterman?
Yeah.
Okay, oyster fishery.
Yeah, I don't think of myself as an oysterman quite yet, but I guess I am. But
I think you kind of are. Is there anything that you want to talk about as we close out in this in the show?
No, I mean, I think you kind of hit it on the head. Is that the big thing I missed in 2020 was the camaraderie with folks like yourself, and so I'm really hoping we can do that pretty soon here. That's how you grow as a person and a brand, just meeting other people of like mind and just sharing ideas and stuff. And it's just, that's what I miss most of all. And I've been fortunate that I've had a little bit of travel this year, but really hoping to amp it up pretty soon here.
Yeah, same here. I've got plans in the future for lots of travel and lots of meeting of, creative minds. And
awesome.
So here's to more wine and more oysters and
cheers to
bring
that.
this together. Cheers to that. Thanks, Travis, so much for
Thank you for having
coming
me
on. And I'm definitely going to reach out to Jess and try to, get a little bit of her time, have a glass of wine or something like that, because I know that she works so hard.
Yeah, she will not have a glass. She'll have a bottle.
A bottle? Okay.
But she deserves it because she works it hard. But yeah.
I'll reach out to her. Well,
Awesome.
Thanks again. And thanks
Thank
everyone
you.
for joining.
Appreciate it.
Take care.
Thanks. Bye-bye.